Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close, the candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. The summer Mara Voss turned 19, she made the mistake of believing that she was the kind of person to whom nothing truly terrible could happen. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive, exactly. She was just young enough to confuse familiarity with safety, to think that because the world had never turned its full, horrible face toward her, it never would. She had driven country roads before. She had driven them alone, music up, windows down, singing off-key into the warm Arkansas dark. Nothing had ever been waiting for her on those roads. Nothing had ever watched. It was mid-July when her parents suggested she visit her Aunt Della in a town called Crest Hollow, a place so small it barely registered on mapping software, a smudge of civilization somewhere in the hill country where the trees grew too close together and the sky sat too low. Mara's parents framed it as a gift, some quiet, some green, some family. What they meant was, please stop haunting our house like a grieving thing, though what, exactly, Mara had been grieving, even she couldn't have said. The year had just gone wrong somewhere. She couldn't find the seam, so she went. She drove through the afternoon and into the long gold hour of early evening, the hills rolling out in every direction, like something breathing in slow, deep sleep. She had a playlist going, something lo-fi and forgettable, and the GPS was directing her down increasingly narrow roads, with the calm confidence of someone who had never once been wrong. She almost didn't notice when the air changed. It was subtle at first, a thinning of the light, a heaviness that settled over the car, the way pressure settles before a storm. She rolled down her window to check the sky, and immediately noticed the smell, metallic and cold, like old blood. Like the inside of a locked room that hadn't been opened in years. She told herself it was a farm, fertilizer, something agricultural and explainable. She rolled the window back up. The GPS recalculated, then recalculated again. Then the screen flickered once, a stuttering pulse, like a heartbeat, interrupted, and went dark. Mara tapped it, pressed the power button. The screen stayed black. She picked up her phone instead and found the bars already gone, all 5 of them, replaced by the blunt, indifferent message, no service. She switched to her downloaded offline maps, but those had gone gray and useless too, the roads on them blank as unmarked graves. She told herself it was the hills. It was always the hills out here. The fog came on the other side of the town sign. She saw the sign first, Hollow Vale, population 412. Painted in old-fashioned block letters on a sun-bleached board. One corner pulled up like a dog-eared page. She had a half a second to register that this was not Crest Hollow, that she must have taken a wrong turn somewhere in the recalculating. And then the fog swallowed the road behind her. Not the way fog usually comes in, creeping, gradual, shy. This fog arrived the way a curtain drops, final, theatrical, absolute. In her rearview mirror, the road simply ceased to exist. The trees on either side ceased to exist. The world behind became a seamless white nothing, and the only direction left was forward. Mara's hands tightened on the wheel. Just keep driving. she whispered to herself, because silence felt dangerous. The road has to go somewhere. She drove. The fog pressed in from every angle, thick and alive feeling, leaving a faint residue on her windshield that the wipers only smeared. The radio, which she'd forgotten was on, shifted from her playlist to pure static, and beneath the static, something else. A low subsonic hum that she felt in her back teeth before she heard it with her ears. It seemed to come from the road itself, or from below the road, from whatever was underneath everything. She was starting to breathe faster when she saw the figure. It was standing in the center of the road. Mara's foot hit the brake before her mind fully registered what she was seeing, and the car shuddered to a stop maybe 30 feet from the thing. Her headlights caught it in full, and for a long, terrible moment, she simply stared, because her mind was trying very hard to make it into something acceptable. A person? It said hopefully. A tall person. Maybe someone who needed help. But the proportions were wrong. It was too tall. 7 feet, maybe more. Impossibly thin in the way a scarecrow is thin. All framework and absence. Its arms descended nearly to the ground, hanging at its sides with no bend, no natural articulation, like they'd been attached by someone who had only heard arms described. Its neck was stretched, elongated the way a reflection stretches in funhouse glass, the head tilting at an angle that necks weren't meant to achieve. It was the tilt that got her the most, she would think later. That patient, listening tilt, like it had heard her car from a very long way away and had been waiting, and was now simply confirming what it already knew. She threw the car into reverse. The fog behind her was a wall. She backed into it anyway, engine whining, not caring, needing only distance between herself and that thing. But the fog seemed to thicken with her movement, to push back, and she realized with a cold, plummeting certainty that she wasn't going anywhere. The road behind her was gone. There was only the fog. There was only forward. She looked back at the figure. It was closer. She hadn't seen it move. She hadn't heard anything. No footsteps. No sound at all, except that low hum in her teeth. But it was closer, maybe 15 feet now, and the tilt of its head had shifted. No longer listening. Now it seemed to be regarding her, considering her. Then it slid forward. Not walked, not ran. Slid, the way ice moves, frictionless and indifferent to physics. Its body maintaining perfect stillness, while the ground simply passed beneath it. In the half second before it reached her car, Mara had enough time to scream, to slam her hands against the wheel, to think this is not real, this cannot be real. And then it was on the hood. The impact was nothing. No thud, no weight, no displacement. It simply was on her hood where it hadn't been before, and its face was pressed against her windshield, and its face was nothing. Just a smooth, unbroken expanse of pale skin, where features should have been. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just that terrible blankness. And she understood with every animal part of her brain that this blankness was not an absence. It was the point. The blankness was the face. The face was the blankness. She heard it breathing, or rather, she heard the idea of breathing, a wet, rattling sound that seemed to originate from every direction simultaneously, from inside the car, from inside her own chest. She was screaming, she realized. She was screaming and couldn't stop. Everything went black. She came back to herself slowly, the way you surface from deep water. First the weight of your own body, then the muffled sounds, then the light. The engine was still running. The headlights still burned through fog that seemed, if anything, thicker than before. The hood was empty. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel, and her mouth tasted like copper, and the radio was still humming that low, impossible frequency that she felt in her molars. She picked up her phone. The screen showed symbols instead of numbers, characters she didn't recognize, angular and wrong, cycling through in a pattern that seemed almost like a message if you knew the language, which she did not. The clock was gone entirely. She drove because there was nothing else to do. Hollowville emerged from the fog in pieces. A street sign, a mailbox, then buildings. And this is where Mara's account becomes hardest to describe, because what she saw when she tried to look directly at the structures was different from what she saw from the corner of her eye. Directly, they were ordinary. Clapboard houses, a hardware store, a diner with a hand-painted sign. But in her periphery, they moved, rippled, breathed. The walls of the diner seemed to expand and contract in a slow, biological rhythm. The windows of the houses were dark and angled wrong, seeming to track her car as she crept through the empty streets. The moaning started somewhere near the center of town. Not loud, not even exactly audible, more like a vibration in the air that her brain converted into sound, because it had to convert it into something. The sound of a place that was in pain, or in hunger, or in some state that had no name in any human language. Beneath it, whispers, layered and close, like voices speaking just behind the surface of reality, pressing against it from the other side. Mara drove through it all with both hands on the wheel, and her jaw clenched, and her eyes fixed on the road ahead, because she had decided with a desperation that felt like faith, that if she just kept going, the town would end, the road would find something. There would be another town on the other side, a normal one with gas stations and phone signal and people whose faces had all the proper features. Then she saw the hospital. General Hospital, the sign said in flickering neon, the pink-red light bleeding into the fog like a wound. Mara stopped the car. She told herself it was stupid. She told herself to keep driving. But the whispers had been getting louder, and they were saying her name. She was almost certain now that they were saying her name, shaping the syllables of it with patient, familiar hunger. And she needed, desperately, to hear the voice of another human being. She got out of the car. The hospital smelled of decay and something underneath decay, something older, something that decay was just the surface of. The floors were cracked and stained in patterns that she recognized with sinking horror as drag marks, long, wet streaks leading down the main corridor, too wide for a mop, too irregular. She walked carefully around them, though some were fresh enough that she couldn't avoid them entirely, and the soles of her shoes made small sounds she tried not to think about. The emergency lights were out. The only illumination came from the neon sign outside, filtering in through the fogged windows in that sickly red-pink glow that made everything look like the inside of a body. The rooms she passed had their doors ajar. She caught glimpses she wished she hadn't, beds with leather restraints, the leather cracked and stained and ancient, medical equipment she couldn't name, arranged on trays with an obscene precision. One room contained only a chair, facing the wall, and from somewhere in the building above her she could hear something pacing. "Mara," they said in voices that were almost familiar, like voices heard underwater. "Mara, Mara, Mara." Not a name anymore, but something else, something between a summons and an accusation. She pressed her hands against her ears, and it made no difference. The sound wasn't coming through her ears. At the end of the corridor, a room with a light, a single bare bulb, yellow and wavering, casting a circle on the cracked floor. And in the center of that circle, a chair. And in the chair, a woman. She sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, with a formality that looked practiced, almost ceremonial. The posture of someone who has been sitting in this chair for a very long time, and has made a kind of peace with it. Her hair was black and long, and moved in a way that had nothing to do with air movement. It shifted and breathed the way the town breathed, the way everything in Hollowvale breathed, except things that should have been breathing. Mara stopped in the doorway. The woman turned her head. Her eyes were black, not dark brown, not shadowed, but black in the absolute sense, the way a hole is black. No iris, no white, no reflection, just two voids in her pale face that seemed to go back forever. They seemed to pull. That made Mara feel the floor tilt beneath her, as if she were standing at the edge of something very high. Looking into them was like looking into the fog. You could keep going and never find the bottom. The whispers exploded into a single, unified scream that Mara felt in every bone of her body simultaneously, and then cut off, all at once, into silence so complete it rang. The woman's mouth opened. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, and her voice was wrong in the precise way a recording is wrong. Technically accurate, technically a voice, but missing the breath behind it, the small, imperfect music of something alive. It was the sound of a voice being performed by something that had studied voices for a long time. "This place is not for you." "What is this place?" Mara heard herself say. Her voice sounded very far away. The woman stood. She unfolded to a height that the room shouldn't have been able to contain, her body moving in sections, each movement a beat behind the last, like a puppet operated by someone still learning the strings. She was taller than the figure in the road. She was perhaps the tallest thing Mara had ever stood in front of, and she moved toward her with those long, sharp fingers already reaching, her face still wearing that expression of total inhuman blankness, and her empty eyes pulling. Mara screamed, and the dark came down. She woke up driving. Her hands were on the wheel. Her foot was on the gas. The fog was gone, and the sun had moved. Not by hours, but noticeably. The angle changed, the light different, and the GPS screen glowed with a cheerful, ordinary map, showing a blue line to Aunt Della's house in Crest Hollow, 23 minutes away. Her phone showed normal numbers again. The clock read 7:43 p.m. She had entered Hollowvale at 7:21. 22 minutes. It had felt like a lifetime. It had felt like the kind of time that doesn't end so much as pause. She pulled over and looked at her arms. On her left forearm, scratched into the skin in a pattern of thin, precise lines, was a symbol. Not cut deeply, not bleeding, but there, undeniable, the edges still faintly red. It looked like the characters that had cycled through her phone screen inside the town. It looked like part of a sentence in a language she'd never seen, which meant that somewhere there were other parts of that sentence, written in other places, on other people, or on other things. The symbol faded over the next few weeks. She watched it go, checking every morning, hoping that its disappearance meant something was being undone, some connection severed. By the end of the month, it was barely visible. By August, she had to press her finger to the spot to feel the faint raised texture of it. But fading is not the same as gone. She stopped sleeping through the night. Not gradually, immediately. The first night after Hollowvale, as if sleep were now a room that had to be rearranged while she was away and she couldn't find her bearings in it anymore. She would fall asleep and then come awake at exactly 3:13 a.m. every night without variation, like an alarm had been set in her chest. The room would be cold. The air would carry that metallic smell, that locked room smell, that smell of fog that wasn't fog, but something wearing fog's shape. Sometimes, in the first seconds before her eyes fully adjusted to the dark, she saw something at the foot of her bed. Tall, still, its arms hanging too long, its head tilted at that patient, listening angle. She learned not to look directly at it. That was the only mercy Hollowville had given her. The understanding that some things exist differently in your periphery than in your direct gaze. That some things are only fully real when you aren't looking. She learned to lie still, eyes aimed at the ceiling, breathing carefully, waiting for the room to warm back up and for the smell to clear. It always did, eventually, but it always came back. She tried once to find Hollowville on a map. She retraced her route, that last exit off the county road, the turn she must have taken when the GPS glitched out. She drove every road that could have led there. She found nothing. No town, no sign, no hospital with a flickering neon light. She found a stretch of trees and a culvert and a dead-end gravel road that petered out in someone's overgrown hayfield. She found a mailbox at the edge of the field, old, metal, the paint long stripped off. She opened it on impulse. She didn't know why, some instinct she would have preferred not to have, and found inside it a single piece of paper, folded. On it, in the same angular, unfamiliar script she had seen on her phone, and on her arm, were 4 lines of text she couldn't read. She took it home. She still has it. She keeps it in a drawer she doesn't open. Some nights, at 3:13 a.m., she can hear it from there, a faint sound, barely audible, like paper breathing. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's Crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media, or on my website, carman-carrion.com. Who knows? Your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's Crypt, every fear comes to life, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.